Okay. Okay, here we go. Right. Okay, so Arabella, I'll let you to check other people in. Yep. Okay, excellent. Arabella is basically my daughter. She's also co-host on this event. Okay, excellent. So thank you very much for joining me on this series of lectures. There's going to be 5 of them. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Subdeacon Valeri Beroskin. I basically do my service in our cathedral in London, in Chiswick, under Vladika Irinei, Bishop Irinei. And basically, I will be doing these 5 lectures under his kind of auspices. Right, so before we proceed, I just, since the lecture is going to be in English, I know some of you are Russian speakers as well, but what I'll suggest, I just quickly read the prayer before we do it, and then I will kick off the discussion. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Okay, so let's kick off. Just quickly, a bit of introduction myself. I have a theology degree, and I'm currently studying for a master's degree in history of religion in 20th century at the St Augustine University in Moscow. I'm doing it through distance learning. I'm actually never attending the actual university. I did my theology degree there as well. So if anyone is interested in Russian-speaking degree, theology degree and master's, I can basically let you know, contact me directly after this event. So this lecture series provides a broad introductory overview to Orthodoxy in the British Isles. And the 5 lectures are designed as a taster, and because this subject is vast, I mean, there's been so many things Orthodox related in this country over this period of time, over the last two millennia, that it's impossible to squeeze everyone into 5 lectures, obviously. So essentially, it will be introduction to key historical events, people, and developments, rather than a fully detailed academic course. So the structure of the presentation, the duration, I'm planning to be 1 to 1.5 hours, depending how long you want to stay and talk. There will be no breaks. Initially, I will go through my slides. And there will be Q&A session at the end, but you are welcome to ask any questions during the lecture. But in order to avoid sort of have it more kind of more how to say, orderly, if you can just raise your hand using the hand button on the bottom of your screen, and then I'll let you in and you can ask the question and I'll try to answer it. Also, some of you, I'm sure, know some of the subjects much in more detail, and maybe I will be making some mistakes. You have more information. You are welcome to, to chip in and, correct me on some points, because obviously I wasn't born in this country. I came here almost 40 years ago, but still I haven't gone to the school here. Some of you have gone, and you know your history much better than me. So let's make it interactive. I'm quite happy to basically for you to chip in during the meeting. Also at the end, in order for me to understand the geographical background, I know that invites have been sent to people in various countries in Europe, in United States, in England. If you could just basically in the chat box, you just say the country you're from, that would be great, so that we can see where roughly who we are talking to in which country. Right, and the other thing is that there will be, at the end of the presentation, there will be a quiz, very simple quiz, 5 questions, multiple choice. And if you participate in all 5 lectures and answer that quiz, you will be assessed on your answers, and I will send you basically a certificate of completion of this course. And also, At the end, after that, there will be a quick final poll. Just basically, if you could provide your rating, your feedback on the presentation, and also if you could provide your contact details so that your email, basically for your name and email for updates about the future lectures or schedule changes. If we need to change something, I will contact you by email so that we can do it quickly. Okay, so that's it about the structure. Let's move on to the contents. So the lecture number 1. Oh, sorry, I'm just quickly checking the people who are dialing in. So quite, yeah, Ireland, UK, London, Greece, England, West Sussex, Greece, Denmark, Wales, American in the UK, excellent, Basingstoke, not far from where I am. I'm actually in Muscat, not far. Netherlands, England, UK, US, Newcastle, east of England, Surrey, not far from me as well. Russia, excellent. UK, fantastic. Right, so the contents. Lecture 1 today, we're going to talk about the beginning of Christianity in the UK, when it came together with the Roman soldiers, as we know. Some of you might know. And the other lectures, as you can see, we will cover different periods. Second part of the first millennia, we will cover next week. Then a week after that, we'll talk about the saints and holy places in England, Orthodox saints. And then we will talk about, I call it Orthodox Renaissance, when basically new Greek and Russians, Orthodox and other people came to England in 18th century. And we'll cover 300 years period. And then the last lecture, we will talk about the current situation, how many churches we have here in England, what kind of jurisdictions exist. So we'll cover that. But in lecture number 1 today, we will explore how Christianity first arrived in Roman Britain and how it basically, the faith survived during times of persecution, invasion, and political collapse after the Anglo-Saxons invaded the country in the 5th and the 6th centuries. Then we will meet some of the earliest British Christian figures, including St Alban, St David, St Patrick, and other Celtic saints who actually helped shape Christianity. We will look at how Roman Britain was formed. We will examine it. Then in 410 AD, the Romans withdrew from the country, and then the Anglo-Saxon came, and how the Christianity survived in other parts of the British Isles, in Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. And we will also look at how monasteries became centers of learning, mission, and spiritual life during this one of these darkest and most turbulent periods in British history. So this opening lecture sort of lays the groundwork for the journey ahead, revealing how the roots planted in Roman and Celtic Britain would later shape our great debates and remarkable saints and ancient holy places, and then the re-emergence of Orthodoxy in modern Britain. Right, so let's move on. Second. Yeah, also, by the way, before we move forward, if you have any questions, if you don't want to basically do it verbally, you can send a text message in the chat, and if I can see it, I will address it, or we'll answer it at the end at the Q&A session. You can do that as well. So before we begin examining the history itself, it's important to understand the sources from which our knowledge comes. Most of what we know about early Christianity in Britain, the Anglo-Saxon invasions and the development of the church, it's basically that information survives through a very small number of historians, monks, chronicles, and official Roman documents. Some of these sources were written close to the events that they describe, while others reflect basically all these agendas and theological interpretations and have been written quite basically long time since the event happened. So we must be careful comparing and interpreting them because of the time periods that separate those chronicles from the actual events. So the sources which I used in this presentation, and generally are used by the historians when they look at this period, is that starting with the Roman historians, one of them is Tacitus. He is depicted here, one of the Roman sculptures in Rome, I believe, and the Suetonius. This Tacitus, he was a major Roman historian, politician who lived in the 1st century AD, and he is considered to be one of the greatest historians of ancient Rome. He has written two main works called Annals and Histories. They basically describe these books, history of the Roman Empire from Augustus to Domitian emperors. And he specifically focused on emperors such as Tiberius, Claudius, Nero. And the other one is Suetonius, historian. He lived roughly at the same time with Tacitus. His most famous work is 12 Caesars, which contains biographies of Roman rulers for Julius Caesar from the Venetian. You can easily find these books on the internet, and I think they're available for free if anyone really likes history. And the Suetonians he basically wrote about Roman daily life, politics, literature, famous writers. Many of his writings have been lost, but some important works survived. There's one other document which doesn't have an author, which is called Notitia Dignitarium. It is basically the picture with, you can, I think, find it on the internet as well. It's a late Roman imperial document which basically talks about how the civil and military offices operated in the Western and Eastern Roman empires, and it describes the structure of the imperial administration and government, and contains a lot of information about the provincial offices, including Britain. So these are the Roman sources. Then the two gentlemen, very famous gentlemen, St Gildas the Wise, his icon is here, and St Bede. They actually are the primary source of information about the Anglo-Saxon time. You can see the dates where they lived, 6th century and 7th century St Bede. We're going to talk about them a little bit more later. So the St Gildas, he was a British monk, 6th century, as they say, and he's basically best known work. He's best known for his work. It's in Latin, De Excidio et Conquestu Britanniae, on the ruin and the conquest of Britain, he wrote. It is basically one of the closest near contemporary sources for Roman Britain. So this text describes Britain before and during the arrival of the Saxons, and he actually strongly criticized political rulers and clergy for their moral corruption. And he praised certain leaders of the basically tribes that existed at the time, the Romans, who actually resisted the Saxons' invasion. So later in his life, he moved to Brittany, which is just across the channel, and he founded the monastery of St Gildas de Ruiz in Brittany. So he was famous for his biblical learning and sophisticated literary style. Again, his book is available on the internet. It's quite interesting, actually. You can read it. By the same token, the St Bede, his Historia Ecclesiastica, is available on the internet for free. So the Venerable Bede, many of you, I assume, know him. He is one of the most important historian and Christian, early Christians. He was a monk. His icon is here. Scholar, historian, theologian. He was born in Northumbria. So he is known as the father of English history because of his famous book. So he lived in the north near the in the twin monasteries, Monkwermus and Jarrow, which is present-day Tyne and Wear. So he actually entered his monastic life at the age of 7 and remained here, basically studying and writing books until the end of his life. So he survived a major plague in 7th century that killed many monks in his monastery. And his writings are included in biblical commentaries and theologian history and scientific studies. He also translated and explained in Greek and Latin church fathers and for Anglo-Saxon readers. And in 19th century, Pope Leo XIII canonized Bede and declared him a doctor of the church, who was the first native Briton to receive this title. Right, so his ecclesiastical history, a lot of information is being used by modern historians from it because this is probably the most detailed account of what was going on at the time. Yeah, he described key events as basically what's happening at the time, the history of Christianity, and when starting with Julius Caesar invasions and St Augustine mission in 597, which is subject to our lecture next week. Yeah, so he also, in his final sections, he basically discussed different missionary work, then disputes over the date of Easter, because there was a big dispute in those days about it. Yeah, he also talked about the Archbishop of Canterbury, Theodore, who was a Greek monk, and he was Archbishop of Canterbury. We're also going to talk about him later. Two other documents is sort of describing the Viking Age is the Irish Annals and Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The historical records compiled mainly by monks, and the Irish annals, they were written from the early medieval period until the 17th century, so it basically took quite a long time to put them together. Some of you might be familiar with them. I'm not personally, but obviously historians use them. They basically, most of the surviving manuscripts were copied and preserved between 14th and 17th centuries. Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is a collection, again, of annals written by in Old English. It records history of Anglo-Saxons year by year. The first version probably was created in Wessex during the reign of the King Alfred the Great, and it was compiled in the late 9th century. Right, and so these are basically the sources when people talk about basically the events, more or less, which they were close to. And there's also a number of literature which I used for, it's just a few books I listed here. The most important one by a gentleman called Gerald Bray, quite famous one, I think, is History of Christianity in Britain. Any of you interested, it's you can buy it. It's actually quite quite easy language, quite easy reading, gives quite a good overview of the Christianity. It's a bit thin on the first millennia, but it goes in much more detail into the Middle Ages and the modern time. There's also a book about coming of Christianity when Anglo-Saxons were here by this gentleman. In regards to the Russian presence and Greek presence in this country, there's a good book written by Christopher Birchall, who basically was a subdeacon. He lived then and he died in Canada a few years ago. And there's also in my fourth lecture, I will be talking about the Fellowship of St Alban and St Sergius, which was basically a very famous fellowship which still exists. And the history of it was written very well, very well done by Dimitrios Salapatos, who is the professor who is he is basically has theology from the School of Theology in Athens, and also he's got a master's in international relations, Queen Mary in London, and currently he is visiting early career fellow at the University of Winchester. So very good book. I've got it, so we will talk about it when we get there. Okay, so that's about the literature. So I'm just quickly checking if there are any questions that require basically immediate response. No, I don't see them. Okay, so let's move on then. Okay, so what we're going to talk about this part is Roman conquest and how they ruled the country, early Christians. Then we talk briefly about Ireland and Wales. And then at the end, we discuss the Anglo-Saxon invasion. So we will begin with the Roman conquest, and then we explore how Christianity spread to Ireland, and Irish monasticism became one of the great spiritual and educational centers. And finally, we'll discuss the Anglo-Saxon invasions and how they transformed Britain, bringing basically decline of the Roman Christianity in some regions, and then the foundations for the Christian revival later on. Right, so Romans. You obviously, some of you, I think, have watched a lot of probably movies that will what Romans did for us. I think there was a series on BBC or something like that. So there's a lot have been said about them. They conquest transformed Britain politically, culturally, economically, and eventually religiously when basically Christianity came on the back of basically some of the Roman soldiers and traders. So then they basically laid the foundations for the arrival of Christianity. So the Romans were connected to Britain through a world of basically to the rest of the empire through roads, cities, trade, military organization, and the imperial administration, which they brought here. At the same time, when they came here, there was quite a bit of resistance, understandably, from the local tribes. The famous one of them was Queen Boadicea. It all became an important part of the British historical memory and identity. You can see this queen here, Queen Boadicea, yeah. Okay, so when it all started, initially Julius Caesar, he first came here before basically Christ, and 55, it's basically supposed to say 55 BC and 54 and 55 BC. There were some expeditions here. First one was 55, and then the second one in 54 BC. Sorry, there's a typo here. So these invasions established Roman influence, but did not lead to permanent occupation. Later, the Emperor Augustus tried to invade Britain in three times in 34, 27, and 25 BC, but he didn't go for some reason because he cancelled them. There was another one, famous Roman Emperor Caligula, who gathered massive army near the English Channel, and basically tried to. But I think weather stopped him from going. So instead, he ordered to collect seashells as spoils of the sea. His soldiers collected them, and he basically then used it as a proof that he basically conquered England one way or another. So the historians still debate this event as symbolic propaganda. But the actual conquest started with full conquest with the Emperor Claudius, and who basically did quite a bit of fighting here, and by the AD 47, Rome controlled southeastern Britain, and then Roman expansion into Wales slowed down by the fierce resistance. And then also there was a revolt, as I said before, by the Queen Boadicea, and she basically burned down the London. At the time it was known as Londinium, which was established in 47 by the Romans. So, but despite all these setbacks, the Romans gradually expanded further north. And then there was another Roman general, Agricola, Julius Agricola, who moved, he advanced Roman authority deep into Caledonia, which is modern-day Scotland. And so the conquest of Britain lasted roughly 40 years. And the historians believe that Romans killed between 100 to 250,000 Britons. And then they built, to protect themselves from the modern-day Scottish people, they built two walls. One basically was Hadrian Wall. You must have heard of this, and the Antonine Wall. The Hadrian Wall was built from the bricks, so it basically stands here still there. You can see fragments of it. And the Antonine Wall was built of the turf clay, so you can see that the remnants of it is just like a small bump in the ground. Right, so the Romans, they have established quite a few settlements here, towns, for example, Londinium, Camulodunum, Colchester, modern-day Colchester. They were established more or less at the same time, and the Colchester was the first, historians believe, capital of England. Then the St Albans was set Verulamium, not far from Londinium. And then York, established in 71. The Ninth Legion apparently came and conquered that land. Okay, so the conquest ended in the first century, and then the province of Britannia, they started ruling the country. Romans started ruling the country, and in 2009, the province of Britannia was split into superior and inferior. And in 410, Romans leave Britain. So I'll just quickly show you the map of the major cities that have been established. So it was England was not only covered, Roman Britain, not only conquered by military, but also transformed through roads and cities and administrative systems. So one of the creation was a road which was called Watling Street, which basically goes all the way from Dover, goes through Londinium, St Albans here, through modern-day Manchester, Telford, and then to Chester. And then and this map shows you how the Roman Empire was split into dioceses. Diocese was actually a large regional administrative district. It has nothing to do with the church. That's how the large districts were called. You can see that there was Britain was called Dioceses Britanniarum. And you can read all the other names here. So this is the Eastern Roman Empire, and this is the Western Roman Empire. So this system actually existed between 3rd century and 7th century, so for about 400 years. So each diocese in turn was split into several Roman provinces. And they were governed, dioceses, by the officials, which were called vicars, vicarii. That's where basically the church borrows these names, I presume. So these vicars represented the high-ranking prefects, Roman civil officials, and the Roman Empire region had 12 dioceses. They increased to 14 by the end of the 4th century. So, and the word actually diocese comes from the Greek and Latin. It means basically administration or management district. Right. So let's move on. Yeah. So this shows how the conquests were made. The original conquests. The map shows different military campaigns done by Claudius and other Roman generals conquering England. So it resulted at the end, this was basically 2nd century Britain. That's when it was split, Britannia Inferior and Britannia Superior. But later on, towards the end of the Roman rule, basically Britain was split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. And cities such as London and York developed into major political, military, economic centers, closely connected to imperial power. So they basically, these administrative divisions, they later helped to shape patterns of regional identity, urban life, and even the organization of the early Christianity in Britain. So the church dioceses, the early church dioceses, they followed this Roman kind of structure. Right. So what are we doing on time? Is it now? I'm just looking. Okay, so we have half an hour already on the way. Okay. End of the Roman rule. So all good things always end. The saying goes. So whether the Roman rule was a good thing or not, it's basically obviously subject to interpretation. But there's an interesting excerpt from St Bede from his Historia Ecclesiastica when the Romans were leaving. Basically, immediately after the withdrawal. The withdrawal wasn't sudden. It happened in kind of waves. But the Pictish tribes, which were living in modern day Scotland, and the Scotia, because Ireland, it used to be called Scotia, and that's where basically name Scotland comes from. They were basically attacking from the west. You can see all these raids that we're doing, and essentially St. Bede was complaining. He said that, yeah, once the Romans leave, then the local population, which was basically under their protection, they suffered many years from the sudden invasions of two very savage nations from beyond the sea. The Scots from the west, i.e. Irish from here, and the Picts, i.e. current Scottish from the north. Yeah, so that's when when things started changing. Yeah, so around 410, Emperor Honorius informed British communities that they must organize their own defenses and that the British legions will no longer support them. So in the following decades, urban life declined and Anglo-Saxon settlement gradually expanded across Britain. We will talk about the Anglo-Saxon invasion in a few more slides, but now we turn to the actual Christians, early Christians. Right, so the origins of Christianity in Britain are surrounded by a mixture of historical evidence, ancient traditions, and later medieval legends. There are two basically main legends that Joseph of Arimathea, who is the saint who basically allowed Jesus to be buried in his tomb, as you probably remember from the Bible. He actually moved to Somerset, the legend goes, and founded Glastonbury Monastery. So the other story is that Aristobulus of Britannia, he is traditionally regarded as one of the 70 disciples, 70 apostles mentioned in the Gospel of Luke. So some of the Christian writers in Rome identified him as the first bishop in Roman Britain. So he was, he was basically described as a brother of Saint Barnabas, and also he, as his brother, accompanied Saint Paul during his missionary journeys. And he is believed to be traveled to Britain to preach Christianity and found Glastonbury Monastery, as I said. And then some traditions say that he actually died peacefully in Britain. And basically, but all these are considered to be a legend. There is no proof, no physical proof of these saints visiting. They actually depicted here on the icons here, being here in England. But what St Bede, for example, said that there was another early Christian here, a king called Lucius, who basically was in the 2nd century living in London, and he basically sent in London or in Kent, it's not clear, but he sent request to Eleutherius, who was the Pope in Rome, a request essentially to become a Christian, and apparently he had received a response, and then since then the sort of Christianity was established. So that's what St Bede says. So these are the earliest information available. To back up this legend or true story, we still don't know. There's a church in the center of London, which is called St Peter Cornhill Church in the city of London. You can see a picture of it here, the current, what's remaining of it now. So it is actually claimed to be standing on the highest points of the city of London and above the site of the Roman Basilica and Forum, which were basically, and it was built in 120 AD. And the medieval tradition claimed that this church was founded by King Lucius, that we just mentioned, the legendary first Christian king of Britain, after his conversion around 179 AD. And then it is claimed to be archiepiscopal seat before the Anglo-Saxon invasions and moving the archbishop seat to Canterbury. And also, yeah, so essentially when you come there, there's actually a pub nearby, and I've seen it once, and you can actually, they excavated it in, I think, in 19th century, and then you can see that at the bottom, there's like a glass visual. You can see at the bottom some Roman kind of structures at the bottom. The church, which was built in the early medieval time, which was then destroyed by Great Fire of London in 1666, but it was rebuilt by Christopher Wren, apparently. So this is basically Christopher Wren church, and yeah. So if this is true, then this church, or the place where it stands, is basically the oldest known Roman Christian church in England. Modern historians, they remain cautious about these legends surrounding the church and other people and other saints that we talked about. But yeah, it's you can read. There's a lot of literature about it, and then you can make your own mind what you can believe in or not. Right. So we are now moving into the another more sort of concrete evidences of the Christianity. So it is now accepted by the historians by the more or less credible mentioning of the Christianity. The earliest evidence of Christianity is by the historian called Tertullian. He's depicted here. He was the history. He basically was one of the most famous historians in those days. And he was basically early Christian writer himself. He lived in Carthage in Roman North Africa. So he lived between 155 to 120. And he produced one of the earliest and largest collections of Latin Christian literature. So in his one of his writings, he basically says all the limits of Spain when he describes the Roman Empire. He then mentions and the horns of the Britons. So that's the first time Britain basically mentioned in Roman literature. Yeah, it is inaccessible to Romans, he says, but it's subjugated to Christ, which means that Christianity has already existed there. This evidence actually is important because the few British Christian records survive from this period. And yeah, so this is basically one of the earliest historical references to British Christianity. The first British saint, St Alban, called proto-martyr, he was martyred around 2009. I guess most of you know his story very well. Some of you who don't know it, I just basically quickly quickly basically tell you what it was. He was a Roman soldier posted in, he lived in Britain, and he is regarded as the first ever recorded British Christian martyr. So he lived in city called Verulamium, mentioned before. It is city currently called St Albans, after him. And apparently he sheltered a Christian priest who was fleeing persecution at the time. He basically gave him refuge in his house. And inspired by priest's faith, Alban converted to Christianity himself. So in order to protect the priest, he exchanged his clothes with him. He basically put his frock, and essentially he allowed himself to be arrested in the place of the priest. And when he was tried, he refused to renounce Christianity or to make sacrifice to pagan gods, and then he was beheaded. So he became the first known British martyr. Yes, so his martyrdom made him a major symbol of Christianity in Britain, and a shrine was later developed on the place where he was murdered, executed, and then basically a massive St Albans Cathedral has been built in it. Many of you probably have been there, and those of you who haven't, it's a very nice place to go. We're going to talk about it in the lecture number 3 in 2 weeks' time. Okay, other interesting events were happening in Britain at the time. St Constantine, the gentleman depicted here, he was one of the Roman generals leading the Roman legions. He was based in York at the time. And when one of the Roman emperors died, he proclaimed himself an emperor in York. And as you probably well know, that he basically is the emperor who established the Christianity. He allowed Christianity. He stopped the persecutions, and he basically allowed Christianity to exist in the empire alongside all other religions. Not only that, he basically went further, and he in 2013, when he basically conquered Rome, he then issued Edict of Milan, and then the Christianity becomes legal. He obviously didn't do it himself. There were a few other people involved, but I won't go here on this. In 325, he convened the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea. So, and then, the Christianity becomes one of the main religions of the Roman Empire. Some of you might have read about this Ecumenical Council. It's very well known when we basically recite the Nicene Creed. It basically was created then. And St. Constantine, he was in charge. He basically was like a sponsor of that Ecumenical Council. His idea was to get all the bishops in the same room and agree. All the bishops, Christian bishops existing in the Roman Empire, get in the same room and agree on the rules, on the dogma, and start the dialogue and start creating the imperial church, so to speak. So he lived. He's famous for that, and he obviously started his career, you might say, in Britain. Also, a confirmation that the Christianity already existed there. There was a Council of Arles in 314. So the Council of Arles, it's basically a city south of France near Avignon. It took place in 314, and that's when, shortly after the Christianity became legal, thanks to Edict of Milan. And what's interesting, at that council, there were 3 bishops from England. One was called Eborius of York, Restitutus of London, and Delphius of Lincoln, probably. So they were mentioned specifically in the literature remaining from that council. So that confirms that the Christianity already existed, and there were already a number of bishops existing in Britain at the time. The other mentioning of British bishops was at the Council of Ariminum. Ariminum is the modern city of Rimini in Italy. And the British delegates, they were so poor, they basically asked for assistance to get back to Britain. And the other delegates, the other bishops, apparently provided them with this assistance so that they could get back. Okay, so also archaeological evidence for organized Christianity in Britain also goes back to the 3rd and 4th centuries as well, not before then, except obviously potentially that church that I mentioned in London, St. Peter's Church. Yeah, so the communities, Christian communities, they developed churches. They obviously, there were bishops and diocesan structures. And yeah, so the Christianity developed from modest beginnings, but generally it grew. And as we look on the development of it around the country in Ireland, so okay, so basically we are making a transition here. So while the Christianity developed generally in Britain during the Roman times, when Romans left, then obviously Christianity and the Anglo-Saxon tribes invaded Britain. The Christianity was basically pushed towards the sides. A lot of people immigrated. Some of the people stayed back. But because of that, it was, I don't know if you can call it blessing in disguise, but a lot of stuff was happening in Ireland at the time. While Christianity in Roman Britain struggled through political collapse and invasion of Anglo-Saxons, Ireland was entering a remarkable spiritual and cultural transformation that would shape the future of Christianity across the British Isles. A new generation of missionaries, saints, monks, and scholars emerged in Ireland and created powerful centers of learning, monasticism, and missionary activities. So the figures such as St. Patrick, St. Bridget, and St. Columba became not only religious leaders, but symbols how Christianity survived on the British Isles, adapted and expanded. So what was happening in Ireland, that there was basically a heresy called Pelagianism, which was spreading in some parts of the Roman Empire, and it was apparently caught basically some traction in Ireland. And then the French, they have sent the Bishop of Auxerre, Germanus, he is pictured here, to eradicate Pelagianism. So he came to Ireland in about 420 AD, and he helped to promote the St Alban cult and his basically veneration. And he is basically is now honored as a saint, both in Catholic and Orthodox traditions. But he wasn't very successful. He was, I think, well, the story goes that he was basically kicked out of Ireland, so that St. Palladius was sent instead of him. And St. Palladius, he was the first bishop before St. Patrick. So Pope Celestine I consecrated him and sent him to Ireland, which obviously proves that there were already obviously Christians in Ireland, and he just needed to continue the work and continue to build the Christianity. Yeah, again, he faced resistance from the local kings and had to leave Ireland. But both him and Germanus then went to sort of North Britain and Scotland, where they did quite a good job and apparently converted quite a lot of Picts and Scots into Christianity. So, and the Palladius himself, he became associated with Leinster, city of Leinster, and the traditions of Eastern Scotland. So he is depicted here as his icon. And then St. Patrick comes on the stage shortly after St. Palladius. He was basically living in Wales, and he came from a good family. And then as a teenager, he was captured by Irish pirates, raiders, and taken to Ireland. And so he was basically working there as a shepherd slave. And after 6 years, he, by grace of God, he escaped Ireland and returned back to England, to Britain. And he then studied Christianity. He went to France, Gaul, as it was called. And then he decided to go back to Ireland again. So he went to Gaul, and he preached widely. He converted a lot of people. He ordained priests. He established lots of churches and monasteries. And when he then got back to Britain, he was not trusted by the existing clergy at the time, and they started questioning him. And as a result of this, he has written his famous work, which is called Confession, which I have read. I recommend you to read. It's quite a spiritual, quite strong spiritual book. It's not big. It's small. So if you have an opportunity to read it, I was really impressed with that. So he became the most famous, influential saint in the Irish Christian history, and as you know, every year Irish celebrate his St. Patrick's Day. It's all around the world. You obviously can read a lot of him about him if you don't already know. So the tradition says he used the three-leaf shamrock to explain the mystery of the Holy Trinity. So that's why it became it's here. That's how it became famous and sort of symbol of Ireland. So he, by the end of his life, he had transformed Ireland into one of the great centers of Christian faith and learning in Europe. Shortly after him, 20 years later, the St. Bridget of Kildare. She is one of the three national saints alongside Patrick and Columba. Columba is here. We're going to talk about him now. She founded the important monastery at Kildare, and she was an abbess and consecrated virgin. Her life has many miracles and has a lot of links to Irish folklore. She was especially connected with farming, livestock, and dairy production. And there was a sacred perpetual fire which was maintained at Kildare in her honor for centuries, apparently. So she's one of the main saints in Ireland. And the other one is St Columba, who was very famous as well. He was an Irish monk, missionary. He founded several monasteries in Ireland, and then he traveled north to Scotland. And around 563 AD, he settled on the island of Iona with 12 of his companions, where he established the Iona Abbey, famous one, which has become a major center for Celtic Christianity. The missionaries from that abbey, from that monastery, they spread Christianity to Scotland, which was at the time populated by Picts, and he basically also he became influential in religious and political affairs at the time. He created and several Latin hymns traditionally attributed to him as well. Then there were also 12 apostles of Ireland connected to another saint, very large saint, celebrated in Ireland, called St Finian. They were called 12 apostles of Ireland. They essentially are students of St Finian, and they studied at Clonard Abbey in County Meath during the 6th century. So this abbey has become one of the most important monastic schools in the early Christian period in Ireland. It apparently educated thousands of students. And then 12 apostles played major role in spreading Christianity throughout Ireland. Many of them became founders of monasteries, influential church leaders, and their work helped to establish Ireland as a major center of Christian learning and monasticism. So obviously, there's a lot of information about these saints. They're very extremely important saints to Irish and British Christianity to Orthodoxy. So you're obviously encouraged to read about them. There's lots of information about them on the internet. Now we move into Wales. So after the collapse of the Roman authority in Britain, Wales became one of the main strongholds of Celtic Christianity and preserved many Christian traditions that have disappeared elsewhere. So the Welsh monasteries, saints and schools, seminaries played a major role in maintaining learning, missionary work, and spiritual life, similar to the Irish establishments. So many of the most influential Celtic saints, including St David, St Illtud, Samson, and St Gildas, we talked about St Gildas already a bit. So they emerged from this Welsh Christian world and helped to shape Christianity later in Britain. So the early Christianity in Wales, it has arrived obviously through the Roman occupation of Britain. Early Christians in Wales, they were persecuted under Roman rule, and the first known martyrs in Wales were Julius and Aaron. There's basically icon showing them here. They were killed around 304 AD at Caerleon. Yeah, so this is so together with St Alban, they represent the first three martyrs in British history, in history of Britain, the Christian history of Britain. So Julius and Aaron, they were, as I said, Roman British Christian martyrs. They were basically executed, and very little is known about their lives apart from that they were basically captured and executed. But the name Aaron, one of the martyrs, indicates that possibly he had Jewish heritage. And the Julius was a typical Roman military name, so he probably was one of the Roman soldiers, as probably Aaron was as well. Another important saint is Saint Illtud, depicted here. And he was a famous Welsh abbot and teacher living in the 6th century. So he founded the monastery and school in Bangor, Illtud, in Glamorgan. And his school became one of the earliest and most important centers of learning in Britain. So apparently at its peak, the monastery reportedly educated over 1,000 students. So St Illtud played a major role in developing Welsh monasticism and Celtic Christianity, and many important saints studied under him, including St David, Samson of Dole, and St Gildas. They were basically his students. And also tradition links St Illtud school with St Patrick and the poet called Taliesin. So one of the students of St Illtud, as I already said, was Samson of Dole. He is here. He was also important Celtic Christian bishop and missionary. So he was educated in the monastic tradition and traveled widely across Britain. And he founded Christian community in Cornwall and in Scilly Isles, where one of the islands of Samson is named after him. Then he became a patron saint of Guernsey. Also in Brittany, he has founded a monastery, influential monastery of Dole, and Brittany is in France, of course. So yeah, he's very well respected saint, one of the founders of Christianity in Britain. St Gildas, we already talked to him. He was famous for his The Ruin of Britain book, which we already mentioned. So he's one of the best documented Christian figures, and he was respected for his scholarship and literary skill. Later in life, he moved to Brittany and founded the monastery of Saint Gilles de Rhys in northern France, and that's where he died. Another important person, well, probably the most important person in Wales is the St David of Wales. That's his icon here. So he was also a bishop in 6th century, and he is now regarded as patron of St. Wales. He founded many monasteries and churches across Wales and Brittany. St. David's Cathedral now stands on the site of his monastery in Pembrokeshire. He became famous as a preacher, teacher, and defender of Orthodox Christianity. At the Synod of Brefi, he opposed the teaching of Pelagianism. He also was one of the fighters of this heresy. And yeah, so when he basically had one of the debates, the tradition says that the ground beneath him miraculously rose while he preached, so that he could be heard, the crowd could hear him. And then one of the miracles, a white dove sat on his shoulder, which later became basically his symbol. So it is shown here, the dove. Okay, so what are we doing on time? It's it's already 1 hour. Okay, this is I believe the last slide in my presentation, and then we will have a questions and answers session. So here we're talking about the Anglo-Saxon invasion. It was one of the greatest turning points in British history, bringing the collapse of the Roman Britain and the spread of new pagan kingdoms across much of England. For Christianity, this period was a catastrophe and a survival story. Many churches and Roman institutions disappeared in Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The faith continued to flourish on the outskirts in Scotland, in Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, and Cornwall as well, and Brittany, obviously, across the Channel. Yeah, so it allowed, obviously, as we just discussed, all this monastic tradition and Christianity in those areas to develop and grow, which later was spread over the rest of the Britain. So after withdrawal of the Romans, the local rulers started fighting with each other, and it was quite chaotic period. One of the rulers called Germanic tribe from Angles or Saxons to help to defend some of his enemies. And when these tribes came here, they actually quite liked it. It basically from modern German and Denmark territories, and Jutes as well. They liked, and they started settling here. They started pushing and conquering local tribes, and and that basically transformed the landscape tremendously. So it was basically collapse, and many institutions and Roman British towns disappeared as well. But it wasn't sort of the end of it. The monastic communities, as we said, already continued to exist in Celtic regions, but still some of the Christians continued to remain in the territories conquered by the Anglo-Saxons, and the communication, obviously, between the churches and Rome became limited. And then obviously the church structure as such disappeared from Britain. Obviously, presumably, majority of the bishops and the churchmen were killed during the conquest. Churches destroyed. So the Christianity was only kept by a number of people sort of privately in their homes, and during that time. And later, when in 597 AD, Christianity started to re-emerge when the Pope Gregory the Great have sent his emissaries, his bishop called Augustine of Canterbury. He came to this country, and that's when he started to basically a new era in Britain, and that's so this remarkable story of conflict, survival, and the rebirth of Christianity will lead us directly into our next lecture next Wednesday, when we go and talk more about how the Christianity have emerged again on the British Isles. Okay, with that, I would like to now move to our Q&A session. And yeah, please fire your questions. As I said, what you can do, because you're muted, you can basically raise your hand. The hand button is at the bottom of your screen, and basically you will be unmuted, and then you can ask your question or any comment or anything you want to talk about.
Maria has her hand raised.
Okay, can you unmute her about?
I'm trying. Yeah, here we go.
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Oh, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you, Maria, yes.
I wasn't sure. Hello, good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I'm currently watching from Greece. I missed, I mean, my battery is very low, and there was a part I missed when you were saying about the road that it was connecting different cities. It had a special name, this road.
Oh yeah, Wakeling Street. Okay, just a second.
Yes, I missed this part. Sorry, because I'm visiting. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes.
This one here, yep. Wakeling Street.
Yes. I think yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one. So yeah, I missed this part. Could you repeat this again?
Yeah, this basically road was built by the Romans. They not only built the road, but they also built different towns along it, which now most of them still existing. Some of them disappeared, but obviously London, St Albans, Leicester, Manchester, Chester, Roxter, Telford, yeah. So this road still exists. I don't remember. I think it's called A5. Not sure, but this road still exists. It runs alongside this Roman road connecting the cities. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If you don't have any more questions, then what I'll suggest, as I mentioned before, we're going to do a small quiz now, and if you can basically answer a few simple questions, it's multiple choice. And after that quiz, I will also enable a poll for the your feedback, to receive your feedback on this lecture. So let me do that. Just a sec. Okay, maybe what I'll do, I'll stop sharing. All right, and then